The champagne was the color of Mara's patience, pale, effervescent, and running out. She stood at the edge of the terrace, her ivory dress catching the light that poured through the glass walls of the mansion, watching the party arrange itself the way parties always did, by instinct, by hierarchy, by who could afford to look bored. 200 guests had come to celebrate 20 years of Callaway Industries, which everyone understood to mean 20 years of Damien Callaway, because that was the story he had written and laminated and hung on every wall. She had let him. That was the thing no one here understood yet. "You look like you're calculating something," said a voice beside her. It was Gerald Fitch, 71 years old, the company's first outside investor, a man who had been folding his reading glasses into his breast pocket since 1987 and showed no signs of stopping. He stood next to her now, doing exactly that. "Just counting," Mara said. "Counting what?" She smiled. "Years." Damien was across the room, holding court near the bar, with the particular posture he adopted at events like this. Chest open, chin slightly elevated, one hand gesturing, while the other held his glass at a calculated angle. He was telling the story of the Meridian contract. He was always telling the story of the Meridian contract. In his version, it was a solo act. One phone call, one negotiation, one brilliant man in a room full of doubt. Mara remembered it differently. She remembered sitting across from Patricia Vance, Meridian's general counsel, in a restaurant in the financial district, while Damien's negotiation was quietly collapsing 2 floors above them. She remembered learning in the space of an hour that Patricia's daughter had just been diagnosed with something difficult and terrifying, and rather than pivoting the conversation toward business, Mara had simply stayed with her in it. They talked for 3 hours. She had missed her flight home. 2 weeks later, Patricia had called her personally to say that Meridian wanted to move forward. Damien had never asked why. The sentence arrived at 9:14. She knew the exact time because she had just glanced at the clock above the fireplace, a reflex from years of managing schedules that weren't officially hers to manage. Damien had moved toward her through the crowd with that deliberate quality he got when he wanted an audience without appearing to seek one. Several people drifted naturally into earshot. He had a talent for that, for engineering moments that looked spontaneous. "There she is," he said, arriving at her side, sliding an arm around her waist in a way that was meant to look like affection and functioned as display. The woman who has enjoyed all of this for 20 years. Something in his tone sharpened. She felt it before she could name it. "You didn't build this life," Damien said clearly, with the careful enunciation of someone who had rehearsed. "You just married into it." He was smiling. That was the part that would stay with her. The smile, confident and cold. The smile of a man who believed he had just placed something heavy on a scale and watched it tip. The nearby conversations dimmed slightly, the way sound dims near a held breath. Mara looked at him. She had green eyes that people frequently underestimated, assuming stillness was vacancy. She did not defend herself. She did not perform hurt. She simply looked at him for a long moment in the way she sometimes looked at problems, with the calm of someone who already knows the answer and is giving others time to catch up. "Okay," she said quietly, and turned back toward the terrace. She did not hear most of what happened next. She only heard it later, assembled from pieces. It was Gerald Fitch who spoke first, apparently. He had not moved from his position near the terrace door, and he had heard everything, and he was 71 years old with no remaining interest in social diplomacy. "I'll tell you what I know," he said to the small cluster of guests near him. Not loudly, but in the carrying tone of a man accustomed to boardrooms. In 2009, when the Hargrove deal was 3 days from killing this company, it wasn't Damien who found a way out. I know because I was on the phone at 2 in the morning with a woman who spent 4 hours rebuilding a relationship we'd burned so that we still had a company to come to in the morning. He paused. He refolded his glasses. "He was asleep," Gerald said. "I checked." Near the bar, a woman named Sylvie Chen, who ran Callaway's operations in the Pacific and had been flown in for the occasion, was in conversation with one of the younger board members, a man named Oliver, who had started 2 years ago and still believed that org charts told the truth about how organizations worked. "I always assumed Damien handled the Singapore situation," Oliver said. Sylvie made a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and a correction. I sent 43 emails over 3 weeks, she said, and 38 of them were with Mara. She found the tax structure that worked. She found the local council who could navigate the regulatory issue. She did it without a title, without billing hours, without... Sylvie paused, seeming to realize she was cataloguing something she'd never been asked to account for before. She just did it because it needed doing, and she understood what was at stake. Oliver looked across the room, trying to locate Mara. She was standing alone on the terrace now, looking out at the city lights. Does she have any formal role? He asked. No, Sylvie said. That was her role. Inside, the emails were Nadia's contribution. Nadia Osai had been Callaway's head of legal for 11 years, and she was the kind of person who kept records, not out of paranoia, but out of a deep, almost spiritual belief that documentation was a form of respect, that events deserved to be witnessed accurately. When the conversation near the bar reached her, she did not add dramatic testimony. She simply said, to the 2 people standing nearest to her, I have an email from 2014 that I've thought about many times. They asked what it said. It's from the night before the Dalton hearing. Damien's statement would have been devastating if it had gone out, not just legally, but reputationally. He had characterized the partnership terms in a way that was not accurate. Mara caught it at 11:30 p.m. She rewrote it. He submitted the revision in the morning without changing a word, and without knowing that the original would have cost us everything. A pause. She never mentioned it, Nadia said. I only know because I was CC'd on the thread. Damien was still at the bar, though the composition around him had subtly shifted. Not dramatically. No one had walked away in protest. There had been no confrontation. But the quality of attention being paid to him had changed in some indefinable way. The way a room changes when someone opens a window you didn't know was closed. He was still talking, but people were listening differently now, with the slight cognitive lag of people who are hearing one thing and thinking about another. He could feel it without being able to name it, the way you feel a current change underwater, directional and cool. He looked toward the terrace. Mara was still there. She had a glass of water now instead of champagne, and she was talking with someone. He squinted. It was Elaine Marsh, who ran the foundation they'd established 6 years ago. He watched them for a moment. Whatever they were saying, it was unhurried. Elaine was nodding with the quality of attention people give to things that matter. He looked away. On the terrace, Elaine was saying, the Veterans Program. I've always wanted to ask, how did that start? I met a man at a Damien's company retreat, Mara said, who had lost his brother to unemployment and isolation after he came home from deployment. He wasn't a guest. He was parking cars. We talked for an hour. And then? And then I called you the following Monday, Mara smiled. You thought it was Damien's idea. He presented it as a joint. Elaine stopped, reconsidered. Actually, he didn't say it was his idea. He just introduced the program and let me assume. He's good at that, Mara said, without contempt. Just accuracy. 3,000 people, Elaine said quietly. That was the number the program served now. Mara nodded. She looked out at the city. There was something in her face that Elaine would describe later as relief, though it seemed like an odd word for it. Not the relief of rescue, but the relief of being seen, of having the thing you are finally correspond to the thing people understand you to be. Are you all right? Elaine asked. Yes, Mara said. I think I'm actually all right. She found her coat herself. She did not make a scene, did not assemble an exit, did not wait to be noticed leaving. She retrieved it from the coat check with the small numbered ticket she had kept in her clutch all evening, and she folded it over her arm, and she said goodbye to the coat check attendant by name. His name was Theo. She had learned it when they arrived, and she walked toward the door. Gerald caught her in the lobby, just briefly. You're leaving, he said. I am. He looked at her for a moment with the particular expression of someone who has lived long enough to identify the precise texture of a turning point. "I should have said something years ago," he said, "about what I knew. About what everyone who paid attention knew." "It's all right, Gerald." "It isn't, but I appreciate you saying so." He paused. "Where will you go?" It was a smaller question than it sounded, and also a much larger one. She considered it. "I don't know yet," she said. "Somewhere I can start from the right place." He nodded. He seemed to understand what she meant, though she had not explained it, which was its own kind of recognition, the kind she had provided for others, quietly and without credit, for 20 years. She walked out into the February night. Behind her, the party continued. It would continue for another 2 hours. Damien would give a toast that was well received and quickly forgotten. He would shake hands and accept congratulations, and tell the story of the Meridian contract one more time, to a smaller audience that was listening with one ear. But something had reorganized. Not dramatically. There would be no press release, no public reckoning, no clean narrative with a winner. Just the slow, irreversible shift of understanding, the way a picture looks different once you see something in it you cannot unsee. People would call Mara in the following weeks. Sylvie first, then Elaine, then Gerald, then Oliver, who surprised even himself. They called for advice, for counsel, for the thing she had always provided. A clear reading of a complicated situation, offered without agenda, held carefully, aimed always at the thing that was right rather than the thing that was easy. She always answered. Outside, her heels were quiet on the pavement. The night was cold and specific, the kind of cold that makes a city feel real, not decorative, not assembled for an occasion, just present and actual and continuing. She walked without hurrying. She had spent 20 years managing the time of an empire. She could take 5 minutes to walk in no particular direction. She had not wept in the bathroom. She had not confronted him at the bar. She had not engineered her exit for maximum symbolic effect. She had just left, the way she had always done everything, without fanfare, without requiring the room's permission, without needing the story to be told correctly in order to know that it was true. The city lights ran along the wet street in long orange threads. She thought about what it meant to build something, how it was not always the person who signed the documents or stood at the podium or gave the toast, how sometimes building looked like listening to a grieving woman in a restaurant until she felt less alone, how it looked like catching a sentence at 11:30 at night that would have cost everything, how it looked like learning the name of the coat check attendant and the parking attendant and the woman who ran the veterans program, and understanding that all of it, the listening, the noticing, the quiet repair of things before they broke, was labor, was craft, was architecture. You didn't build this life. She almost laughed. She hailed a cab at the corner, gave an address that was not home, and settled into the back seat as the car pulled into traffic. She looked out the window at the city sliding past. Not ruined, not vindicated, not waiting anymore to be correctly described. Just visible. Just finally, fully visible.